Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back in Era Islamic Abrahamic Wisdom. History often remembers empires for their victories, but rarely for their restraint. Power, when armed, has a dangerous habit. It begins by defending the state and ends by ruling it. In the most volatile years of Islamic expansion, when borders stretched across deserts and civilizations collided, Amir ul-Mu'minin, Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiyallahu an, faced a constitutional dilemma unprecedented in history. How do you mobilize an army strong enough to protect the state without allowing that army to become the state itself? This episode is not about battles. It is about discipline over force, law over steel, and constitution over command. Based on the scholarly works of Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir, today we uncover how Umar, radiyallahu an, created a military system that won wars without militarizing society. This is military mobilization, constitutional authority.
So think about this. Every single state, from ancient Rome to a modern superpower, faces this exact same fundamental problem. It's this incredibly delicate balancing act that literally defines whether a country survives and whether its people remain free. How do you protect yourself from all the dangers out there without creating an even bigger danger right at home? This isn't just some dusty old historical issue. It's a live question that every leader has to deal with. And that brings us right to the heart of the challenge that Omar, may Allah be pleased with him, was facing. You gotta remember, this was a time of unbelievable expansion. He had threats on multiple fronts, huge borders to defend. He was right in the thick of it. So the question for him wasn't theoretical. It was, how do I build a fighting force that is lethal, effective, and can respond at a moment's notice? But at the same time, how do I chain that force to the Constitution so it can't just steamroll civilian life and law? It's the ultimate political stress test. Now, if you get this balance wrong, it is absolutely catastrophic. History is just littered with the wreckage of states that failed this test. And they almost always fall into one of two disastrous traps. These aren't just minor mistakes, they are fundamental failures that have led to the collapse of empires and the end of freedom for millions, over and over again. So what are these two traps? Well, on one side, you have weak defense. You're basically a sitting duck. You can't protect your borders, and you're just inviting aggression from your neighbors. But the other trap is just as deadly. It's over-militarization. That's where your protector becomes the predator. The army you built to keep you safe becomes so powerful that it starts eating away at your own society, your laws, and your freedom. The real trick is to walk that razor's edge right between them. Let's dig a little deeper into that second trap, because it's sneaky. It works like a slow poison. First, the generals start having a little too much say in politics, and civilian authority starts to fade. Then, emergency rules that were supposed to be temporary just kind of become permanent. And of course, anyone who speaks out is suddenly a threat to national security. All the while, the massive cost of this war machine is draining the treasury and breeding corruption. Before you know it, the army isn't serving the state anymore, it's serving itself. So, you've got these two nightmare scenarios. How did Umar avoid falling into either one? Well, he didn't just play defense or react to problems as they came up. No, he was an architect. He established a single, powerful, and brilliantly simple governing principle that became the bedrock for his entire state. This wasn't just a suggestion, it was a bright red line that nobody was allowed to cross. And here it is. This is the core idea, the whole shebang. Military power must be decisive in battle and subordinate in governance. The absolute genius of this is how clear it is. It creates two completely separate worlds. Out on the battlefield, the army gets everything it needs to win, to be absolutely dominant. But the second you're off the battlefield and back in civil society, the military is completely under the authority of the civilian government. One job does not bleed into the other, period. Now, a great principle is one thing. But a principle without a plan is just a nice thought, right? Omar didn't just talk the talk, he built the actual machine to make it work. He created a whole system of rules and institutions to lock this principle into place. This is where the theory gets real. One of the main pillars of this system was a department called the Diwan al-Jund. Now don't let the name throw you. Think of it as the military's HR and accounting office, but with a constitutional superpower. By keeping meticulous, transparent records of who was enlisted, what they were paid, and what their families received in pensions, it acted as a massive guardrail. It made it impossible for a popular general to build his own private army by playing favorites, and it stopped corruption in its tracks because all the money was accounted for. The very structure of the army was also genius. There wasn't a permanent standing army in the way we might think of one today. Instead, mobilization worked in steps. First, you get a temporary call-up for a specific campaign. Second, once that mission is done, you're demobilized. You go back to your farm, your shop, your family. And third, even while serving, troops were rotated constantly. This was crucial. It meant the army was always professional, but the soldiers themselves were always civilians at heart. They never became a separate political class with their own agenda. And this is maybe the most critical piece of the whole puzzle, a strict, non-negotiable separation of powers. Military commanders had total authority over strategy and discipline on the battlefield, and that's where their power ended. Everything else, running a city, administering justice, handling finances, that was all firmly in the hands of civilian governors and judges. Even in a war zone, a soldier who committed a crime against a civilian wouldn't go to a military tribunal, he'd face a civilian judge. That's how you keep the army from swallowing the state. You really have to appreciate just how completely mind-blowing this framework was for its time. This was a radical break from the way empires had been run for thousands of years. The Persians, the Romans, their models were totally different. Umar wasn't just making a few tweaks. He was throwing out the entire playbook and writing a new one from scratch. I mean, just compare it to the old way of doing things. Empires either relied on mercenaries, who would switch sides for a bit more gold, or they created these super powerful generals who, more often than not, got a little too popular and decided to march on the capital and become the new emperor. Under those systems, war was normal, and military rule was always just around the corner. Umar's innovation was to engineer a system where you could have overwhelming strength and deep constitutional restraint. They weren't seen as opposites, they were designed to work together. And that simple idea right there captures the heart of this entire doctrine. It proved to the world that you don't have to choose between being safe and being free. You can and you should be both. It showed that it was possible to build a military that could conquer its enemies without conquering its own people. That right there was the genius of it all. Okay, so this is all really interesting history, but you might be asking, why does this 1400-year-old system matter to me today? The answer is, well, everything. Because the basic problem has not changed one bit. Countries all over the world are still grappling with these exact same issues: war powers, civilian control, emergency laws. The principles Umar established offer some seriously enduring wisdom for anyone trying to build a just and stable state today. And these lessons are as sharp now as they were in the 7th century. Let's run through them. 1. Your constitution has to be crystal clear about who can go to war and how. 2. You must keep military and civilian power in separate lanes. 3. No secret military budgets. The funding has to be transparent. 4. There have to be strict, legally binding rules on protecting non-combatants. And 5, and this is a big one, you have to have a clear exit strategy for demobilizing troops and ending states of emergency. If you fail on any of these points, you're just asking for trouble. So, to wrap it all up, the achievement here was just profound. Umar ibn al-Khattab built one of the most successful armies in human history. It won wars, it secured a massive and growing state, but it did it all without ever taking over the society it was created to protect. It was always the servant of the state, and it was never allowed to become its master. And I want to leave you with this one last thought, because it just nails the entire concept perfectly. A constitutional army defends borders, an unbound army redraws them from within. Just let that sink in. An army with rules and limits protects you from outside threats, but an army with no limits, it starts to change the map from the inside. It's the ultimate lesson that sometimes the biggest threat can come from the very people you hired to protect you. If you found this exploration of Islamic wisdom valuable, and we really hope you did, please do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. Give this explainer a like, and please share it with your friends. It makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for joining us.